Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Therapy for Dads podcast. I'm excited to have my friend Nate on again, second time. He's been on previously on the show, and that's episode 59. And before I jump into the topic, Nate, can you just do a quick introduction of who you are, what you do, and
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Nate Feathers. I'm a father of 5 and happy to announce going to be a father of 6. We just went to the midwives. Like, they have a practice we go to, and then as we get closer or further along towards the due date, he starts coming to us. But we went to her practice today. I got to hear the heartbeat, good, strong 164 beats a minute. I was honestly thinking twins, but it sounds like it's only one heartbeat, so we're okay with that. I'm okay with that. I don't have to buy a new car or anything like that to fit us all. So soon to be father of 6, due in March or end of February, early March. I'm on Instagram, the handle at Dads Don't Babysit, just sharing my whole understanding of how fatherhood probably should work better, considering I've gone from, I have a 19-year-old all the way down to going to have another one here coming up in 2024. And things I wish I had known as a younger father, I just want to share to the younger fathers so that they don't make the mistakes I made and they can connect with their kids better, so that when they send them off into the world, they still feel that great connection and they don't have the regrets I've had for at least my oldest. And obviously, if you're watching the video, you're going to see one of the youngers. It's just me and her today, so she's going to probably bounce around behind me, but that's just part of it.
No, and I love it. I love that this is real life. This is part of what we do as dads and moms, right? It's like, hey, they're part of our life. They come in and they're there. And so I think it's just real life. And I love that she's bouncing around.
Well, I've gotten to that point where I'm like, take them with you, right? Take them with you to work. Like, if we could take them with us everywhere, that's what I want to do.
I agree.
And the truth is, this is kind of some of the stuff that I do. And so it's like, well, if you're getting me, you're probably going to get one of my kids at least coming in.
Yeah.
At some point.
No, and I agree. I think that's such a model that I think in our current modern day and age has become more difficult given kind of what we do. But you're right. I think most of life was done that way, pre 100 years ago, past 100 years, like before that, even probably less than that, actually. You know, I guess Industrial Revolution, like before that, we were kind of doing, the kids just kind of did what we did, and they were along for the ride and did it. And in some ways we did better stuff then because of that. In other ways, I think not so good stuff. But so I think we always have to learn and assess kind of what we're doing in our current context in our society, of what we're doing well and what we need to improve. And kind of speaking to what you said, and by the way, congratulations on the next child. I think it's amazing. I remember when you told me, I was super stoked, and so I'm so excited for you guys and to go back into the cave for round 6. And but the good news is, I think it's going to tie into our topic today. And I think one reason why I have you on today is, one, I like you. I think you're a cool dude, and we vibe well. So that's the first reason, first and foremost. But second is that you do have experience, and from that experience, it wasn't meaningless experience. It's been looking at it and saying, how can I continue to grow? And in a way, you get to do it again, 6th time, and really even take all the stuff how you've grown up to this point and say, wow, I get to give more of this. And not that you can't give it to your 19-year-old, because of course you can.
Right.
It's just different. And so, the topic for today is don't sweat the small stuff, and kind of what that's about for you and what that means for you. And I think, speaking from kind of where you started years ago and kind of where you were to where you are today and what that means to you. So what is that? Don't sweat the small stuff. What does that mean to you, and why is that such an important thing?
Well, it's one of those things where, and I'll tell you kind of a story about a big time, and so you can kind of understand the concept that it comes from. Is I had spent, my oldest was 9. You really have to pay attention. So this is kind of like a public service announcement at the same time. I forget what he got, but he got some kind of tablet thing, and he got intrigued, and we had not been paying attention to like whole setup, like safeties and safeguards. And so somewhere along the line, him and his friends had been talking about something, and he started getting intrigued in what, like, basically in porn. And I think about that and I go, okay, in my first experience with porn was, I was 11 years old, which in my opinion is way too young, but kids are exposed to it even younger now because there aren't safeguards.
I was 7.
So public service announcement, safeguard your children by being careful with that. Know what they're getting into, what they're getting on, what they have access to, all of those things. That's a huge, important deal. I remember when that happened, I I realized it's a big deal. And my wife at the time, my ex-wife now, she freaked out. She freaked out. Like she did not know what to do. She was crying. She's like, my baby is completely going to be, he's totally, spoiled or whatever, in the
Mm.
sense of like, he's ruined. And I just remember being like, I remember at 11 years old wanting to see it, having that weird feeling of like, this is not good. It's not right, but I want to see more. Like I remember all of those things. And so I looked at him and I'm like, I looked at her and I said, you need to leave him alone and let me have this conversation. And then I just sat down with him and I was like, look, man, this is normal stuff. This is not, you're not abnormal. You're
Mm.
not bad for wanting to see this. And then I just talked to him about like, this is just not good for you because this is not, one, you're not ready for it. And two, this is not the way you need to see this. Like
Mm.
sex is awesome and beautiful and amazing. And at some point you will experience that, but this is going to screw up your mind to how things work or how things are supposed to be.
Mm.
And it will skew your view of a lot of things, not just women, but sex in general. It may skew your
Yeah.
view of yourself. Like there's so many things that go bad here. And, honestly, what's scary is that we had to hope we happened upon it when we were kids. We had to hope that we happened upon it in like an abandoned house or, like somehow got under the uncle's bed and found it. Like now it's so easy to get to.
Right.
And they're also coming out with more and more stuff where I came from a religious background. So I had the shame and guilt of it being a horrible sin to have done that, like it
Yeah.
was so heavy on me that there was like, you just like fall back into this, like I'm a horrible person. Right. And I didn't want that for him
Right.
because I remember how that felt. And now it's so easy to get to. But what's crazy is that now they are looking at studies of brains where if like as you watch porn, it really actually physically messes with your brain. And to that level, I was able to speak to it outside of a religious understanding. So
Yeah.
I wasn't coming at him like, this is bad and this is shameful. I was able to be like, hey man, this is a good thing turned bad. It's a good thing. It's a great thing and a wonderful, beautiful thing that we as humans have distorted. And at the same time, I was also able to say, and it really will like jack with your brain to a level that is not good,
Mm.
and I didn't have to bring the God aspect into it. Not that I didn't want to, but I didn't have to make him be afraid he was going to go to hell for it, and that's where I lived when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Like I want to see it and yet I'm afraid and I'm going to go to hell, like all these things. And so when we had that conversation, I was so chill and so calm about it because I was like, hey man, you're human and you're
Yeah.
a dude. This is a normal desire. It's like, I feel like it was the first time that I looked at my son and was like, you're human too, man. I don't know where the disconnect was up to that point, but all the other stuff they do, they're kids. So you think I lived this way before, but it was like, well, you're less than, you're just a kid. You don't understand. You don't have life experience. All of the things, forgetting that he is in fact a human and they do in fact have all the emotions that we have and they just can't express it. Like all of that is changed for me. But at that point I realized you need to hear this. When I was thinking about Zeke, I'm like, you need to hear this from a man who felt this way, understands it, and it's going to be okay. So that's one of the big things. That was the biggest thing in his life at that time.
Yeah.
Man, every little thing, like the small stuff I'm talking about is like that.
Yeah. So that was a big moment, right? That's a big,
Yeah, that was a huge
that was a
moment,
big
right?
moment, right? That was a big, and it
Yeah,
sounds
and I
like you
felt
navigate
amazing
that
as a
well.
dad.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
sounds like you addressed it well. And as a dad, you
yeah,
felt amazing, like confident, like I addressed this well. I was calm and, it's a human thing. And I brought some of the science in. And, as you're talking, there's a book I have on my shelf called Your Brain on Porn, which is actually looking on, the physiological changes of the brain and a whole bunch of other stuff. And that's a whole other side podcast episode that I've actually done before on pornography and
yeah.
what happens to the brain. But I think you addressed it and you handled it like a champ. Like, okay, I got this. And you said, okay, I need to address this calmly and normalize it, not shame it. And this is a big deal, right? And so that you did well. That was
Yeah.
well handled. But then it's like the small stuff that
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about today is, okay, well, what about those small things? Do I handle those well?
Exactly. And I can tell you that a lot of time I feel like probably for dads, we don't handle the small stuff well. It's the stuff that just starts to annoy you and drive you crazy, that you're like, why do I constantly have to repeat myself?
Hmm.
And I just did a post about this the other day, but I'm like, maybe because repetition is the mother of all skill and your kid needs to learn. So they just keep doing something wrong until you're able to, until it clicks. They're going to
Yeah.
do the wrong thing until it clicks, because how many of us as adults still do the wrong thing? I've heard it say like, you're going to keep doing, like, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting until you learn the lesson. And honestly, like, thank God for the fact that he's going to keep giving you the opportunity to learn the same lesson over and over again, right? But as parents, as dads, it's like, why are your shoes always in the middle of the, like, we open the door and you take them off and they're right here, right? And that's where I failed horribly, because I'd be like,
Mm.
dude, what is the deal? I told you this yesterday. Why is this a conversation we have every day?
Yeah.
And I feel like I can tell you this. I'm very aware of it now, but the way we talk to our sons specifically, but the way we talk to our children can be extremely belittling. And I'm a big believer in the fact that I'm a big believer that our voice is the voice that it becomes the voice in their head. So if I'm constantly belittling them and constantly talking down to them, then their voice in their head when they're older is going to constantly be belittling them and talking down to them. And so from that to make your bed, and you
Hmm.
can say make your bed and want their bed made without being a jerk. And I just didn't
True.
do that. I'd be like, every morning you wake up, you make your bed. What's the problem?
Mm.
While I'm sitting there with my bed unmade because I'm a
Mm.
jerk. Right? Like how can I? That's kind of that's how I did things. And so it was, I mean, seriously, like shoes, they're always going to be everywhere.
Hmm.
Clothes are not going to make it in the hamper. Toys are going to be everywhere. I mean, if you have kids, the dream of having a clean house is likely not going to be realized until your kids are gone. Teenagers will break all your stuff. Your kid, like, they just leave stuff everywhere. I
Yeah.
find packages from granola bars and stuff like stuffed in the seats of the cushions of our couch, and I'm like, what is going on? That's all
And
that little stuff.
yeah, and then that little stuff, and I'm wondering, like, a couple questions I want to slow down and
Yeah,
kind of tease it out a bit for
yeah,
all the parents. And I totally relate to this, by the way, that those little things can get us kind of frustrated, annoying, aggravated, and it could lead us to, like, maybe not being so calm, I would say, or collected.
yeah.
And so if you think about then, or even now when you have these moments, but especially then, what do you think was going on for you? Like, did you have an awareness of internally what was happening for you, of like why it was so triggering, or was it still, were you some level of like disconnection of meaning, like, I'm just frustrated because they're not listening, or was there something deeper to that you had an awareness of?
What's funny, that's two-part, I think, because I look
Yeah.
back and go, oh, that was my problem.
Mm.
But then, no, kids are
Okay.
supposed to just, like, when I was in that stage of life with Zeke specifically, because he is the oldest, when I was in the stage of life I'm in now with like Finley and Wyatt, and don't get me wrong, I still screw this up.
Mm-hmm.
But like when Zeke, who is 19, was 7, 8, I didn't have the awareness where it's crazy to me to think that I can now like step out of the situation mid situation and look like almost like do like a 360 view of what's happening and be
Mm.
like, why are you like almost in the middle of it, be like, why are you talking like that?
Mm.
Or why are you so upset? And then like click through stuff in like milliseconds to come back into the situation and either and change course.
Mm.
Back then, no, dude, I seriously was thinking kids are supposed to listen to their
Mm.
parents. They're supposed to do what they're told. And I was justified and supposed to be like the hard parent who makes them do what they're supposed to do because
Mm.
they have to learn.
Gotcha.
And like now when I sit here and I look back at that guy, I feel bad for him. I'm like, you're missing out on so many opportunities to just
Mm.
connect with your son, to connect with your daughter. Like you're missing out on so many opportunities to just like be in their life,
Mm.
And so no, I did not have this situational awareness of there being something deeper, or even I want to say the humility. I didn't have the humility in my own spirit to say, it's not what he's doing that's really the problem. It's triggering something inside of me.
Mm.
And that's the thing that needs to be worked on.
Mm.
they're little. They don't have any life experience to be able to like say, well, you need to learn these things. Well, perhaps I need to learn what happened to me back then, so that I can stop being so, what happened to me when I was their age, so that I can adjust it for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
So the awareness back then was maybe one dimensional of like, no, they're just supposed to listen, just supposed to, I'm supposed to be the bad, the hard parent, the one who enforces the law or the rules of you must follow and obey, and your shoes need to be this way or bed needs to be, otherwise there's some type of, punishment, right?
Mhm.
Because that's what you knew. And then, and there was a disconnect, right? It was kind of more surfacey of like, this is just what happens. Now you look back years and with, hindsight and say, wow, actually this dude missed out on a lot. And there was more going on here that he had awareness of. And so
Yeah.
I'm wondering, could you speak to like when you gained or what happened, the journey to getting to the place of that light bulb moment or something that clicked in of, maybe I'm kind of part of this issue here. Maybe there's something deeper. Maybe it isn't really them, it's me. Like
Yeah.
what, can you speak to roughly when that happened or how that happened or the journey
Yeah,
to that?
sure, absolutely. I can't say it was like one specific thing that all of a sudden clicked. I will say that the so get I so I got I've been divorced. I don't know if I've said this or not in the past or not, or I probably was between you and me, but like
Mm-hmm.
I was married, had 2 children, got divorced, got remarried. We have 3 and 4 on the way, so total of 6 kids for the most part. Even with the younger ones like Finley, Wyatt, Luna, I would say that there was still that going on, but I was fighting it. And the beauty of it is that my wife, Megan, she's so strong that when I get that way, where I'm like, you're supposed to do what I say, right? She is not afraid to like mama bear up, right?
Mm.
Because I would say that, like, I mean, you know how it is. Don't mess with mama bear. Like don't mess with the cubs. Like they'll
Mm-hmm.
come at you, and if they got it, they'll scratch your eyes out. I mean, I love that, and I love that about her because she is not afraid to call me out.
Mm.
I think that where that comes from is even when they were like as they were growing up, I would still say it was within I would say it's really been a process over the last year and a half, that having my oldest leave the nest has really hit me. And so to speak to how I was and how my relationship was with him is it's an ongoing process of healing with him
Mm.
and having more and more open conversations. But I can see at 19, I can see the things that he does right now that that seem to come from how he was treated when he was younger. And so it
Mm.
became a pattern for him. And so because I was like, best word I can use is oppressive, because
Mm.
I was more of an oppressive style authoritarian parent. You really are going to get, I think you're going to get 2 responses. You're going to get the one who bashes back against you and they're not going to want to be around you, or you're going to get the one that like acquiesces at the moment and you break them. That just kills my soul.
Mm.
And they don't want to be around you because every time they're around you, they don't like who they are around you. They don't like how they feel around you. Why do they want to be near you?
Mm.
And all of that really clicked in as we dropped him off at college. I came home and I was like, I don't know what my relationship with my son is now going to look like, because
Mm.
now he's not here all the time.
Mm.
And that really hit home. And all it was I don't want to have that same problem with my other kids. And what I started to do was I started to share those thoughts. And I'm a kind of out loud thinker anyways. So, when I'm thinking through anything, I usually bounce it off my wife, because I just need to hear it out loud and,
Mm.
take her ideas and run them through. And so some of my sharing on Instagram was really just like more conversational, in the sense of I'm going, hey, I used to think this way, but something tells me I think it should be something else.
Mm.
And in the midst of that, getting pushback or feedback from that enabled me to start to go, that's interesting. I should take it this direction.
Mm.
And it really started to foster that desire to really understand how to be a better dad. And as that happened, and as people interacted with that, I just started solidifying my own thoughts. And the amazing thing is that all of a sudden people start coming out of the woodwork that I can learn from,
Mm.
that I can go, wait a second, they wrote a book about that 10 years ago? Like, how have I not heard of this? But I wasn't ready for it 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I'd have
Yeah.
been like, that person's a quack. you know?
Can you speak to that for a second for maybe some of the dads, mom, or whoever's listening that might be in that place of like, I don't got it. Like, what do you think that was like for you, that the barrier to being receptive to maybe the quack, so
Yeah,
to
yeah, sure.
speak?
I think it was arrogance in myself.
Hmm.
And I think when it comes to men, and this is spoken from my own experience as well, but I think that a lot of men resonate with this, is that we don't want to be weak. We don't want to make weak
Hmm.
kids, especially sons. I think we're way harder on our sons than we are on our daughters because the world is harsh. If you're a man, and this is the hard part, I think you speak to this really well, especially for guys like on your reel today, and you're like, "Does a bear shit in the woods?" Like I'm like, exactly. Like that was perfect
Hmm.
because for men, we think, well, the world is harsh
Hmm.
and cruel. And the truth is, when you look at statistics, you're going to see there's more men in prison. There's more men
Hmm.
that are homeless. There's more men with mental health issues. Like all of the things that you see as bad things in this world, they're upon men. And
Hmm.
so, as fathers, when we're raising our sons, we have this need to make them strong, like they're not allowed to be weak. And so we also then think, at least this is the way I thought, well, that means I need to be hard.
Hmm.
And so anybody who would have said to me, like even 7 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever, that would have said, like, have you ever considered like gentle parenting? Even to this day, the concept of gentle parenting to me, I feel a resistance inside me. And it's weird because I think that conscious parenting is very understanding of that and probably leans that way. But gentle implied weak to me.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to be a weak parent. I'm
Right.
supposed to be in control. I'm supposed to run the show and you do what I say.
Hmm.
And so there was an arrogance and a desire to be the strong parent because obviously strong parents make strong children.
Right.
And it was misguided
Hmm.
in the sense of how I understood it.
Yeah.
But I think that was based out of some serious arrogance and stuff inside me.
Yeah, well, and I hear the other thing I'm hearing too is I think fear of your child being harmed. And you
Mhm.
tell me if this fits. Fear of your child being harmed, so therefore I need to be tough because I need to again toughen them up to this
Yeah.
harsh world, and so then I need to. It's kind of like it's a way of like a misguided way of protecting in a way because the goal is like the intention is there's a good intention,
Hmm.
but it's like a one dimensional view of what that might look like.
Right.
And then you kind of spoke to it earlier that then why do men and women too, but why do so many men struggle with higher suicide rates or mental health issues or other problems, drug, alcohol stuff? Like if we are making quote unquote tougher men by this way of parenting by being harsh and hard on them, is it the question then begs, is it actually effective? Like
Right.
that view, that very narrowed view of
Absolutely.
parenting, is it
Yeah.
actually effective?
Right. Yeah.
So, and obviously
Yeah.
not, that's we do know. But so for you back then, it was kind of an arrogance, a fear. I have to also, I don't want to be weak because I'm guessing admitting that I need help would be weak, right? If I don't have if I have to look to someone else to help me parent, that's admitting that I'm weak, and that's not okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that was part of it too?
It could very well be. I mean, when I look at my heritage too, like my father, my grandfather, when you hear the stories they would tell is, my dad, my grandfather is a legend in my family,
Hmm.
like much love to him. Like he passed away 10 years ago, but like the way I can tell this is as an example. So my dad was like 15 years old and he put on my grandfather's shoes and he goes, "Look, Dad, I can wear your shoes." And my grandfather like turned around and took his elbow and just bang, like dropped him off of his feet, like shot him out of the shoes basically to the floor and was like, "The trick, son, is staying in him." That was like touted as like manly.
Mm.
And it's like my grandfather was a huge man. I mean, when he passed away, there were people that came by came to the funeral were like, "He's the strongest man I ever knew. Like he's the strongest man I ever met." Like there was so many stories I got to hear about him at his funeral that I'm like, wow, he is legendary. So there's a part of me that goes, wow, that blood runs in my veins. That's amazing. But the other side of it is the harshness of growing up in the 30s and being treated poorly by his parents or his dad specifically. Like I think 11 years old, he had a full-time job.
Mm.
Like that's the kind of stuff you deal with. And then my dad, like he wanted better for his sons, but he didn't know any better. So there was still that, like that to me, like to a lot of people, that's abuse, but that was touted as like just dad being dad, like
Hmm.
beating up on his sons. And so I didn't get that kind of I didn't get that kind of training from my father because he saw that as not so great. But at the same time, that kind of strength and power of being dad had to come with him. So his came with a stern voice and you'll do what I say,
Mm,
and this is how it works. So when I look at that, I go, well, that's literally the default setting for me,
mm,
right? And
yeah.
so my examples and the people that I had around me as father figures to
Mm,
say that's who I'm going to be, they didn't do conscious gentle parenting. They
mm,
didn't look at teaching boys to be like emotionally aware.
mm,
It was, we do work, we're feathers, we're made of sterner stuff than that. Like that's just
mm,
kind of one of the statements that was made from generation down.
yeah.
So I think some of it may come from weakness, but it also come from not wanting to be weak. But it
Yeah.
also came from, it's so bad. I love my father, but there are some things he would say with Zeke specifically when he was little. He's like, yeah, he just doesn't mind. He doesn't mind what you say. He doesn't want to. He doesn't do what you tell him to. And it was almost like he wasn't. I can't say he was trying to, but then I'm going, oh, I have to make him mind. I have to do the things that make him be controlled, especially when he's around my dad.
Mm.
But so it's me trying to like, there's so much I'm sure as like a therapist you can unpack there and be like, wow, Nate is really screwed up.
No, 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 no.
But it's one of those things where when I look at that, I go, oh, that's why I spent a lot of time trying to appease my dad, because the
Yeah.
truth is I didn't get approval from my dad
Mm,
either. So as a dad, I'm trying to raise my son the way I see my dad wanting me to raise him
mm,
so that I could get his approval.
ah,
And all it did was make more disconnect between me and my son.
mm,
It's like, and if you're not willing to basically hold the shield from your ancestors to keep your kids from taking those arrows, or just take them yourself, then they're gonna get hit. And
mhm.
so as a father, I keep going back, going, I have to be willing to take whatever arrows come from the ancestry and just be like, yeah, that's fine. I mean, you can think that, that's okay,
Yeah.
and then continue to do what I'm
Yeah.
doing so that they can grow in better soil. It would be.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what I'm hearing, there's definitely a strong family cultural narrative
Yeah. Oh yeah.
of being a man, right? Being a feather. And so, what that looks like. And even what's also interesting though is what your dad did in a way. He knew there was something different about this, and maybe some good, but also some not so helpful for him.
Yeah.
And so he took this step, and then you were in this position of, okay, I want my dad's, which I think is so common, and I think not talked about enough. But I think there is such a strong pull of seeking approval from our father, being
Oh yeah.
enough, or having value and having worth and things, and looking for them. I mean, I remember feeling it too with my dad when I was younger. I just want to be approved by him. I want to be seen as enough. And so I would do certain things in order to garner that approval, which wasn't effective because, at the time I still wouldn't get it, right? So it's kind of like this subconscious thing. And so part of what I'm hearing for you is, one, I got to be strong. I want to protect my kids from the world. So I got to be this harsh, strong parent, be the bad to kind of toughen them up. Then you have
Toughen 'em
this
up.
cultural family narrative of what it means
Mhm.
on top of that. And then you just got, I think, I'm assuming just also just growing up in our culture of like what it means to be a guy versus, what's okay, what's not okay, what's the
Yeah.
rules, like what can guys do and not do, don't be vulnerable, all the classic stuff.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
then so you have all that as a parent, and you're trying to parent your kids, and maybe teaching your son, the oldest, kind of how you were taught, and maybe doing a little better, realizing, okay, this is what my dad did. Didn't like that as much. So still gonna take a step down the path, but still hitting a wall of like finding myself stuck in maybe some of that authoritarian, like you gotta listen, I gotta toughen you up. And so that was kind of what you're bringing in. And I think that's so important because often there's a story as to why we do what we do. It's not just because. It's never.
Yeah.
It's rare. It's never just, oh, I'm just doing this. There's
Yeah.
always there's always a story. There's always a reason as to why someone's behavior is the way it is, even if it's not good.
Right.
Even if we look in saying, "Ooh, that's not helpful," but there's always a story. There's always there's experiences that lead us to this place of seeing that this is maybe okay or normal, because that's often what we experienced or what we're trying to maybe push up against too, to some degree.
Oh yeah.
And so you brought that in, and then what hit you was your son leaving, and you had something clicked inside of like, "Ooh, I'm not going to see him as much, and something's different." So something inside started to stir, and so that's maybe it sounds like when maybe there's little moments too of shifts happening of like, awareness clicking, clicking, clicking. And then when he left, it sounds like it really hit. And then you started the verbal processing, and then things started to shift, and the snowball in a good way started to happen. I guess a good snowball of picking up speed. And then, and then what happened? Did you like reach out and talk to someone? Like, did you start reading books? Like what, so you had this awareness. And so what was the next step for you if you were to look back, like, and if you were going to encourage, like, your younger self, kind of what you're
Sure.
kind of doing now with the work you do, is what would you encourage you then, how could you speak to yourself then to take that step to grow?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting because in the same moment that I am at the same time that I would not have been a guy who would read parenting books, right? I would be the guy who would read like self-improvement books,
Hmm.
right? And so like, how do I become better? I'm the guy that's like, okay, how do I get stronger? How do I get stronger faster? How do I get faster? Like, who do I need to look to do that?
Hmm.
How do I make more money? Like, what do I want to do to make, X amount of dollars? Like, I'm the guy that I love reading. I'm a total nerd. And so I'll read all of those things. But weirdest thing to say, I was too arrogant to even be like, yeah, I'll read a parenting book, And so I think what ended up happening was that clicked, and I was like, I don't like, what am I going to do? And I will
Hmm.
say that. So I posted a video that went viral, and that really got a following going, and it got me going. Well, I've been posting videos about other things. I definitely want to help people, And I remember being like, I don't want dads to feel the way I do. Like, if you're the father of a 3-year-old and you are the way I was, man, like, get as humble as you can,
Hmm.
start reading, start following, like, get people around you that are not thinking like you,
Hmm.
because it will help you build up what your concept is. I can't
Hmm.
I could get into it if you want me to, but when I was, let's see, this would have been right before Zeke was born. So I was 23, and I was living outside of the country. I was living in Costa Rica. I was working as a missionary, learning Spanish, and I had started reading these books about this concept that feels very heretical to a lot of people, about how, like, if God is omniscient, does he know all things, or does he know everything? And what
Hmm.
I mean by that is, does he know all things that could be and are, and like what were, what was, what is to come, that kind of thing? Or could he just be aware of everything because he's everywhere all at the same time? And I started working through that concept, and then I started bringing it into my classroom in Spanish. So I had to think about it even more, because I had to translate the words so that I could have these conversations with my classmates in Spanish, because I'm there with a bunch of Baptist missionaries. I was not Baptist, and so they thought completely differently than I did. And that is one thing that I always enjoyed, that I may have just be, I like to be the devil's advocate, but I
Hmm.
would literally just try to take the complete opposite understanding of something, and then bring it into a conversation so that I could see if I really believed it.
Hmm.
The reason I bring that up is because it really solidified in me what my beliefs about God were at that time with that particular concept.
Hmm.
Fast forward all the way to a year and a half ago, and that's pretty much what I started to do. Was some of the content I put out was really I'm thinking this way, and I think I have enough to like back it up, to where if someone were to come back at me as a, like, to talk about fatherhood specifically, the one I'm thinking of is, I did a reel about spare the rod, spoil the child,
Hmm.
gave some cultural historical background, and said, yeah, I don't think it means what we want it to mean. And I think it definitely doesn't mean that we should spank our kids. Now, there
Hmm.
is a verse right behind that that does say, if to a level, I'm going to destroy it, but if you beat him, he's not going to die. But wouldn't it be better if he didn't die and you did that to keep him safe? Yes, there is that right there. And tons of people push back on that. But I also I know Proverbs are like little blips of wisdom. They're not, they are to be in a whole concept of, like, when you exegete a passage, there's a whole concept that comes from. But I'm not trying to take that out of context. I was trying to understand that cultural, and why would he say that?
Hmm.
Right. And so in that moment, I just said, I think it means that when we don't protect our children, we ruin them.
Hmm.
And not, if we don't beat them or spank them to discipline them, we spoil them, and like spoil brats.
Hmm.
I was like, I think that the wording and the concept is different. And the truth is, I got so much pushback on that I looked at my wife and I said, I think I'm onto something.
Hmm.
Like, in the comments, I could be like, that's a dad, that's a dad, that's a dad, because the vehement, you're totally wrong, you're leading people down a wrong path, people bringing up the verse right behind it, all that stuff. I'm like, are you advocating for spanking your children right now? Are you advocating for hitting little people? Like, that's what it felt like to me. And so as I worked through that, I just kept solidifying in my heart that I think I'm onto something here with this whole, why do we have to yell at our kids? Why do we have to spank our kids? No joke, man. Within weeks, Dr. Shafali like dropped into my feed, like just, oh my gosh, I watch Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu all the time. And there's a 4-year-old video of her on his show that I've never seen before. And I watch his stuff constantly. And I'm like, how did I miss this? And there she is talking about conscious parenting.
Yeah.
And I'm going, this is the stuff I'm talking about. So to a level, I didn't start reading a bunch of books. I just really started to verbally say, well, what if it was different? And let people almost attack me to take it so that I could really start to solidify what I believed. And then came Gabor Mate. I think I said his name right.
Yeah.
Shafali. Actually, honestly, that's when I started connecting with people like you. The more I do this, the more people like you just come into my life and help me go, yeah, I'm on the right path.
Yeah. It's what I'm hearing that is this plain devil's advocate, meaning why am I doing this? What is my belief system around why I'm so demanding with my kid and my eldest, and something's happened, something shifted where maybe in me felt a little off. Because again, it sounds like there's layers here, the layer of like your family culture, pleasing your father, to then how you've sensed being a parent. There's layers to this. And then you got to a point where, similar to maybe when you're in your 20s, of playing devil's advocate, really trying to challenge people, which makes you think why you believe what you believe, which is important for all of our belief systems. Like, actually, why do I think this? Like, why do I, whatever it could be. It could be why I think eating steak is more effective than fit, whatever it might be, right? Or why waking up early versus going to bed late, or a religious perspective, whatever it is actually challenging, which is part of also, I think, growing up.
Yeah.
And maturing is kind of, in a way, deconstructing why I believe this and to build it back up again. So actually it's firmer. It's, why, setting a good foundation. And so you did that with your parenting and then started putting this stuff out there. And then you started getting pushback, which for you, it sounds like it helped you kind of, let me ask more questions and think and ask this. And then, oh my gosh. So then people started dropping in at the right time. It sounds like, and maybe too, you're in a place to see it. I think sometimes too, if we could be so focused on a certain perspective that we tune out, so to speak, anything else. And so it's like we have blinders on, so we only see what we want to see until we're ready to kind of say, well, the why question. Why do I believe this? Why do I think this way? Which kind of opens up our blinders to kind of maybe take a step back and get a bigger view and say, I don't know why, but my dad did this, my grandfather, but then I see this, and why do I think that's weak? Why do I think that's weak? I don't know. I just know I feel like it's weak, but why? Yeah. And then, maybe this is why. And so this started happening. And then you started kind of learning and expanding and growing and reading and getting other authors on, and like Shafali. And did you speak to Gabor Mate? That's awesome if you did, by the way.
No, I haven't. Man, that'd be awesome.
You saw him. Okay, I was like, dang, that's awesome.
He popped up again. It's stuff like that. I feel like when, they always say when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Totally.
Dude,
yeah. No,
all sorts of teachers popped up into my feed on like YouTube, Instagram. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And even still to this day, I mean, I started liking stuff from, I don't know what her real name is, Elle Breggy. If you don't follow her, she's a great follow, but she has a lot more with motherhood, but I resonate with a lot of that.
Sure.
But I started following her, and I think you start following stuff and more people just show up. Mm-hmm. That is a plus side to the algorithm of a lot of social media,
Yeah, there's a plus. I agree. There's a plus within limits and structure.
Yes, yeah, true.
Especially with kids. So coming to today with kind of what you're doing now, like you had this journey and really having to challenge yourself, really. What I'm hearing, the big theme is challenging yourself, your own perspective, and where that came from. And trying to examine it from a healthier perspective too, like, okay, why was my dad the way he was, or my mom, and where did they come from? What was their story? To give me perspective as to their way of doing life, and then how does all of that impact me for better, for not so better? And then now as a parent, when I'm dealing with some of these small issues that are really triggering for my emotional states, like I'm highly frustrated, or I'm angry, or I'm annoyed, or demanding, now with some of the work you've done, you've been able to kind of maybe take a step back and examine it from a healthier view. So I'm wondering, as we kind of start to come to a close,
Yeah.
a couple things. One, what are a couple now with the small stuff?
Yeah.
What are some things you do practically when you maybe notice some of that really strong emotional reaction, like maybe high frustration or high annoyance or, high maybe even anger? Like, what do you do practically to kind of slow down, so to speak, and collect your thoughts to be more responsive versus reactive? Like, what do you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. So there's one major that as it starts to rise, if my wife is around, she's not afraid to say something. And so
Hmm.
my suggestion to men is listen to your wife. You don't have to do everything she says. I'm not that guy that's like, "Oh yeah, just roll over and let her run the show." That's not what I mean. But my wife will say, like, she'll be like, "Do you need to talk like that? Do you need to do that?" Like, and most of the time I used to get real mad, and
Hmm.
she'll probably tell you like that I get frustrated now too. I don't really get frustrated. I can literally she'll do that and I'll pull out for a second and just be like, do I really need to do that? And then I can come back into the conversation. So sometimes just my wife just being there and saying something is so extremely helpful. I hope she hears this because I probably don't tell her that enough. But it's so extremely helpful to have that. So
Hmm.
for guys that have a wife that doesn't parent exactly like them or that parents more this way and when they're harder, man, just at least take what she's having to say and try to see it
Hmm.
outside of your own perspective.
Yeah.
Because even in the moment, most of us guys are going to be really frustrated because if you're like me, not only are you now like dealing with the authority issue that you're the authority in your family and your kids are supposed to listen to you, but now your wife is directly opposed to that authority and in front of your kids sometimes maybe. And I'm not saying that that should be the case, but I mean honestly, if you're wrong, you're going to need to have the humility to be okay with being wrong and then
Hmm.
being like, you know what, you're right. I'm so sorry about that. That's not
Right.
how I need to talk. So having a spouse that will say something does give you that space. Even just a little quick, hey, hey, hey,
Hmm.
just that can be enough
Yeah.
to go, I don't need to talk like this. I don't need to do that.
So it sounds like with that, what I'm hearing is part of it's like letting go of your own ego and really taking
Oh,
seriously what your partner spouse is saying, okay, how can I, what's the truth in here? What are they trying to help me, do and be better? Almost like letting it sink in and actually take it seriously versus
yeah,
just just defend against it and push it
yeah,
away. But like, okay, let me take this seriously, maybe listen to what they're trying to get at to help me be better, more effective. And really, when I get my defense is probably my ego saying, no, I got it right,
yeah,
So allowing the influence of the other to help you. So that's one thing. Let's say she's not there. Let's say you're
yeah,
on your
sure.
own and,
Yeah,
you're out with the kids or whatever. And some small things starting to just kind of get under your skin. Because the old you would probably, I don't know, demand, yell, punish,
oh,
things like that, right? Like take away
absolutely.
tablets and ground
Yeah.
them, isolate, put them on timeouts, things like that, and maybe yell, demand. But so, what do
Yeah.
you do now to slow down, to ramp it down when you are starting to feel heightened and
Yeah.
frustration, anger, annoyance?
Yeah, sure. I really do breathe. Like I think I've actually
Mm.
heard you say like 4 breaths, like breathe in deep, like hold for 4. Like I will be in the middle of something and be like
Mm.
and just try to breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, and then come back to it. Sometimes you really just that's all it takes.
Mm.
I do have an advantage. I'm not saying I have an advantage over other dads. I think I have an advantage in my own life at this point that I'm far enough into this journey that I have awareness of a lot of things. So for me, it's like, why am I taking the tablet? The instant if I take a tablet, the instant if I take it in a moment, like my inner voice will be like, why are we taking that right now? Is that going to
Mm.
serve them? Like being okay with talking to yourself, and it sounds crazy, but like being able to talk to yourself and in a moment, in that same moment, and then have that conversation internally. Again,
Mm.
I feel like our internal conversations are fast.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't take 10 minutes in my head. It's like seconds. So I
Mm.
take a tablet or something like that and I'm like, "No, you know this that." And then it's like then I'll hear my voice go, "Why are you taking that?" Like you give them a certain amount of time on there. Why are you taking it early? What's the big deal? Right?
Mm.
I hate video games. Like ask like I have a real like there's dads out there that are like, yeah, just play video games with your kid. Great idea. I love that. And if it works, do it. I'm not that dad. Like I'm like I hate them so much because most of the time I see my kids play them, get frustrated. I've seen my youngest son want to throw his tablet. He gets so mad he cries. I'm like, why are we doing this?
Mm.
It's not the video game that's doing it to him. There's something
Mhm.
else there. So
Yeah.
I've got to take the tablet at that point
Right.
to like talk about this whole regulations thing. Sometimes I'll just be like, come here, man. I have had a 6-year-old kid, or yeah, 6-year-old kid, like in my lap, just holding him crying about something on Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, it's going to be okay, buddy. It's all right. And that is not the way I would have been before.
Mm.
That's because I've sat there and said, okay, I don't like video games, but it's something they like.
Mm.
Like again, coming back to this, I keep coming back to the whole humility and fighting your ego,
Mm.
because I think that's where sweating the small stuff or not sweating the small stuff comes
Yeah.
from. Again, a lot of mine probably comes from control,
Mm.
but that's because I didn't feel like I had control of anything when I was younger. So now I want
Mm.
control of everything. And, the best thing I can do for my own kids is to stop trying to control everything.
Wow.
So recognizing my own stuff, and in the moments having my own little internal conversations, and then adjusting as I go. It's hard to give advice on that or say this is practical, other
Mm.
than it just
Yeah.
has become part of my life because I've been able to say, okay, that
Yeah.
is a full little human.
Mm.
How would I feel if I always had somebody telling me no, and always had somebody sitting there telling me I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, taking my stuff? Oh my gosh, I would be a rageaholic. I would be so angry all the time.
Yeah.
Well, cue a 7-year-old who doesn't know how to regulate his emotions and do all that to him.
Totally. He's gonna have an emotional reaction. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
You're like you're both the kerosene and the match at that point. And you said something that just totally just hit me, and you tell me if this fits, but you got to like a deeper part there, and maybe that's what this is all about, or has been, at least for you, and maybe for some other men out there. And this may not be their exact narrative, but my guess is there's probably something close to this. But you said part of why maybe I became hyper, like authoritarian, the bad guy, the domineering parent of like, you just keep listening, is because I didn't have a lot of control when I was a kid. And so I'm seeking to control to try to make it okay and fix it and make sure we're safe and okay. But in that light, if I do that, I might actually miss those opportunities with my kid to sit and hold him when he's crying and just being a safe space for him, because I might become the threat now to my kid because it's out of my own fear and my own pain from not having control. And now I'm trying to like demand it and force it, which is actually creating more distance and more suffering, so to speak,
Yeah.
for me, for my kid, and for our relationship, rather than, I think a question is like, what am I doing? What is my intention here? What am I really trying to get at with my kid? What do they actually need right now? What do I
Right.
actually need right now? Because
Yeah.
right now I'm sensing I feel out of control, and so I'm trying to force it.
Yeah.
So if I put that down, what am I actually needing? And what are they actually needing?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's spot on. I love how you put that too. And I think the hard part is that because they're little and they
Mm.
can't do it, we're almost required to set our stuff down and help them deal with theirs first.
Mm.
Within the moment, right? In the moment, I've got to take care of the 6-year-old.
Right.
But that's why I lean hard on discipline in the sense of self-discipline. That's why I'm up early to work out, because that helps me regulate and helps me deal with stress. It gives me time in the car alone. That's why, like, when there are alone moments for me to work on self, or when I'm reading, I don't read nonfiction. That's not a hit on nonfiction, or I don't read fiction. Like, it's not a hit on that. If you like fantasy novels and stuff like that, totally cool. I don't do it because I don't get a lot of time to read on my own. And I would rather read something that's going to make me better than just something that's going to entertain me, And that doesn't mean I don't watch TV, but all of that to say, like, in those moments where I can learn how to become better, I need to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Because there are plenty of moments with my children awake where I need to attend to them first, because they just can't. They need me, not me needing them in that situation. And so I have to be able to take my stuff, set it down, and like my need to control needs to go over here, and their need to connect needs to take a higher precedence. And if I'm not working on myself outside of those moments, when I'm in those moments, my need to control will be there, and I'll not set it aside.
Yeah. And something else you said right there is that in this moment, they need me more. They need, I'm their guide, because I think one thing too that I see a lot of here is a lack of education on essentially brain development and child development of where they are at ages where we expect as parents kids to be able to do things perfectly all the time, and just like you show them one time and you should know this, right? Like I just told you this 5 minutes ago. What's wrong with you? Or we just talked about this last week, right? Because we get in that mindset of like, I already told you this and you did it, and they did it well, and then
Yeah.
they don't do it well the next time because we get in this mindset of like, well, it's like you've already done this. Like,
Yeah.
come on. But we have to remember that actually how development works. And this goes, I think, back to something we talked earlier, is that kind of repetition of time and time again. It's like, it's what did you say? You said it so well.
Repetition is the mother of all skill.
There you go. Thank you. That
Yeah.
it's exactly right. Because eventually they're going to get it, and they're going to, like with the shoes and all the other things, it's you teach them, but it's the how you teach them. But if you just yell at them, they might learn, but what are they actually learning, versus, what does the teacher do? How do we actually be a helpful guide as a father where they're not actually trying to seek our approval? They know we approve of them for who they are, and in turn can do these things and know that they're still going to have to grow just like we are. Like you said, like I could demand my kids all day long to make their beds, but is my bed made? Like, am I actually modeling this stuff? And so, as a final close-up question, if you could encourage dads maybe where you were, a couple years ago, what do you think, and this is, what do you think you could have said or heard from someone that might have kind of gone past some of your ego or barriers or stuff that maybe a dad can listen to today, and it might sink in? Like, what would you say? What could you say?
I think that I would say the advice I would give if they were willing to hear advice would be be as humble as you can be. Like be willing to learn. Because if you're humble, at least in those moments, knowing you don't know everything gives you the ability to go, well, I don't know everything. Let me listen. And then you're at least open to something. Even if you end up going, that is quackery and I totally disagree. That's okay. But being open to listen to it and being willing to be like, you could be right and I could be wrong. That is great. The thing I would say if it was somebody like me who probably wouldn't have wanted to listen is I was talking with a guy and I said something to this level. It was like the cost of me not having the ability to do this all over again with my oldest is so high that if you could put me in a time machine with what I know now and go back, I'd pay any price, right? So I guess the thing I would say to that guy is, what if this way worked? Like, what if calm, conscious parenting actually did what you really wanted to accomplish? Would you be willing to try it? And then just, if that guy said, like, if they said yes, then help them walk through that. Because I think back in the day, if someone, and that's the hard part, is that you don't have a bunch of guys walking around going, hey, this whole fatherhood thing is wicked hard and you're going to screw up a lot and you probably are going to do it wrong most of the time. Let me help you. You don't have that. You have guys like you and me on Instagram, but like, I'm just somebody on a video, right? You don't have real guys standing around you doing that. And guys we need that. I mean, look at every tribe back in the day. We learned to, even now all around the world, like where you can find a more tribal style living, you have men teaching each other, teaching the boys to become men. The older men are respected and listened to, not because they're old, but because they've already experienced it, And so, I would say having somebody look at me and go, well, what if everything you think is wrong and this would actually accomplish what you're looking for? Would you at least give it a shot?
Yeah, that'd be a big ego hit for, if you're in that place of not willing to listen, of like, oof, because that's looking in the mirror and saying, ooh, maybe I'm part of the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And that's going back to the humility piece. Hey, I think those are good questions. And Nate, I appreciate your time today. And my hope is that wherever you are listening to this, mom or dad, or hey, maybe you don't have kids yet, that's okay. That this is something you could take away from Nate's wisdom and from his experience, and say, maybe ask those questions like, hey, what can I examine my life, and why am I doing what I'm doing, and what's my narrative, and can I challenge it a bit, and maybe ask some different questions, and am I sweating the small stuff? Am I getting stuck in these small moments that are really triggering? And if I am, that's okay, but use it as an opportunity to go deeper with yourself, to figure out, what is this really about? Is it about control? Is it about safety? Is it about proving your worth? That competence? There's often some need that's hidden behind often these big emotions, even for ourselves, men and women. So Nate, thank you You could find the links to Nate's stuff down below in the description, whether on YouTube or if you're on the audio, it's also there. Reach out to him. He's a great guy. Please do. I think congratulate him on his new baby. I think he's also working on some stuff that might be coming out soon sometime. I think he's working on some other things that he's going to be offering, which, when he does, I'm excited to promote it. But, anyway, blessings. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, man.
Bye.